Hi there, I'm going to share my sermon video for today. The gospel reading is Luke 10:38 to 42, and it follows on from the readings that we've been hearing for a few weeks now. So feel free to pause the video, have a read of that, and then start the video up again. So this is following on from a whole lot of stories about the guest and the host as Jesus and his followers are traveling towards Jerusalem. And earlier on, they had turned up at a village and been turned away. It was a Samaritan village, and they're all Jewish, and those two nations had fought each other. So there's a lot of grief between them. People in that town were probably worried that it's not safe to be welcoming them into their town. Later on, we're told that there's 72 others traveling with Jesus, quite a crowd. And so Jesus sent them out in pairs to different towns to find the places where they can stay, where they can see that people want to build peace, and where they can promote peace together. And amazing things come out of that. Healing and release from torment occurs in those places. Now they've come to the house of Mary and Martha, Jesus and his crowd of followers. Have you ever had a guest turn up when you're not expecting, or a whole crowd turn up? How do you feel when that happens? They turn up at the house of these two sisters. Martha's response is to get very busy in the kitchen because there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed. And what Martha's doing was considered appropriate for a woman to do in that place and time. Mary's response is to sit with Jesus and listen to what he has to say. Mary's doing what it would be expected a man would do, sitting in conversation with the guest and being served. And Martha gets mad because she's working like crazy, trying to get a meal prepared, while her sister is sitting there chatting with the guest. It would be expected by her that Jesus is going to agree that Mary should be in the kitchen too, in the woman's place, not talking with the men. It would be expected that Jesus would back up what Martha has said and shame Mary, saying she should be in the kitchen. Instead, Jesus shames Martha, saying that all the work she's doing is unnecessary. He says that in front of all of the guests. He says what's necessary is what Mary has chosen, devotion to Jesus. I often feel like this is pretty mean to Martha. There are a lot of guests who need to be fed, possibly 72 men who don't know how to cook in a kitchen. And these roles can be really hard to break out of. There were women who broke out of these patterns and sat in conversation with men, but often it was seen as immoral, as though they were doing something shameful, as though they had an ulterior motive in being in the men's space and talking to the men. I've heard people talk about this as though Mary's devotion to Jesus is like believing and being saved by our faith, and just trusting that we're saved by our faith. She's just happy to be with Jesus and doesn't feel like she needs to do a lot. She just accepts his presence. And people have said that Martha represents our tendency to try and work for our salvation because we feel like we aren't good enough to sit and just be present with Jesus. We have to do something to show our worth. I know there's definitely times when I feel like there's so much that needs to be done and I feel like it's all up to me to do it. And I've sometimes worked myself into a real tears trying to do everything that I think is necessary. And I'm not a nice person to be around when I'm in that kind of space. The question is, what is it necessary for? Who is it necessary for? Deep down, I feel like it's because I feel like I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy. And I have to prove my worth. I feel like I've got to work extra hard to prove my worth. When actually, Jesus just looks at me with love and wants me to be present with him. That's how Jesus looks at all of us. Jesus says what's needed is simple. What's needed is just one thing. We're not told about what happens next. We're not told about what Martha's response is. We're not told about what happens the following day. We're just told that later on, Jesus teaches them how to pray. He teaches them that prayer about daily bread and about praying for his kingdom to come. But I wonder what might have happened the next morning when somebody has to get up really early to cook the daily bread. Does Martha keep working herself to death in the kitchen? Or does she invite Jesus and Mary into the kitchen so they can do the simple task of making that daily bread together, while Jesus' followers crowd around the door and listen in to the teaching that's happening as they're working? I wonder, is that how they learned how to pray that way? Is that where they learned about how to pray for the arrival of a new society where everyone has enough for a simple life?